Demet didn't plan to stand in that hallway again, but the city has a way of dragging you back to the door you swore you'd never touch. The building was the same, narrow corridor, tired paint, the faint echo of lives stacked on top of each other. She told herself she was just passing by, that she would walk past his apartment like any other door on any other floor. But her steps slowed, and then stopped, exactly where her heart had learned how to break, outside Can's place. On the other side of the wood, everything she couldn't forget lived like it paid rent: laughter too loud for midnight, plates clinking after a fight, then make up dinner, the soft way he used to say her name when he thought she was asleep. She pressed her palm to the door, not to knock, but to feel the cool steadiness of something that wasn't her. She needed that steadiness. Because inside her chest, the old tremor was back, the one that starts as a memory and ends as a quake. A kettle hissed. Footsteps. A chair scraped softly as if someone nudged it with a knee. And then it happened, the thing she'd trained herself to live without, his voice. Not loud, not even aimed at anyone, just the low, textured warmth she knew better than her favorite songs. It rolled under the door and caught on her breath. "I thought silence would be kinder," Ken murmured, and Demet's fingers curled against the paint. She didn't move. She didn't dare. "I told myself not calling back would protect us. But silence, it screams when the room goes dark." Her throat tightened so fast she had to bite her lip to stop the sound. That night. The call. The line that rang and swallowed her courage whole. She told herself she'd been strong to walk away, that strong people don't beg, don't text twice, don't call again. But strong is a word that breaks if you stare at it long enough. Can's steps came closer, she could feel it, like the air shifted molecules to make room for him by the door. "I kept everything," he said, voice roughening on the edges. "The notes. The photo with the bent corners. Even that dumb receipt from the bakery where you said you loved me by accident." He exhaled a laugh that wasn't really a laugh. "I tried to throw them out. I failed." Demet closed her eyes because the hallway tilted. He remembered the same details, the tiny, sharp ones that cut when you pick them up. For a second she pictured his hands, the way his knuckles carried stories from sets and gym floors and long, restless nights, the way those hands steadied her when words didn't. "If you're there," he said suddenly, the words quiet but intent, like he was learning how to speak to ghosts. A pause. "I don't know what I could say that wouldn't hurt us both." Demet's breath caught. He knew, or maybe he only hoped. She leaned in, not enough to be seen, enough to be burned. And there it was, the first crack, a clean, bright pain splitting her chest. Behind the door, his voice. On this side, the pieces of a heart that remembered how to shatter. "Say something," she mouthed to the wood, knowing he wouldn't hear. Or maybe he did. Because the kettle clicked off, and the apartment went so still it sounded like a decision. Demet pressed her forehead lightly against the wood, the cool surface grounding her while the rest of her body trembled. Every word that spilled from Can's mouth seeped through the cracks like smoke, filling her lungs, burning her from the inside. She wanted to scream, to bang on the door, to force it open and demand answers for every night she cried into a pillow he never came back to. But she stayed quiet. Silence was safer, even if it was breaking her in half. Inside, his voice softened, almost as if he were talking to himself. "I told myself anger would help me forget," Can admitted. But it didn't. "Anger is heavy. Grief swims. And I drowned in both." He paused, and she imagined him rubbing his face, the way he always did when emotions cornered him. She could picture it perfectly, his broad shoulders sinking forward, his jaw clenched, his hand dragging down his beard like he was trying to scrape the pain out of himself. Demet's chest tightened. This wasn't the untouchable star everyone adored on red carpets, the confident man Italy had claimed as their own. This was the Ken she once held in her arms, vulnerable, wounded, human. The one who whispered fears to her at 3 a.m, when fame and cameras and magazine covers felt like nothing compared to the shadow of loneliness. She pressed her hand flat against the door. For a second, she swore she felt the faint echo of his palm pressing from the other side. The thought almost undid her. Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to pull away. Then came the words that shattered her all over again. "You were right," Ken murmured. "You said love isn't a rescue mission. That it needs a home, not a hospital." But his voice cracked. "I only knew how to bring bandages when what you needed was a key." Demet bit her lip hard enough to taste blood. Memories crashed over her, his endless apologies, his promises to do better, his desperate kisses after their fights. She had loved him through every storm, but she had grown tired of waiting for the sun. That night, when she had finally gathered the courage to call and beg him to fight for them, the silence on the other end of the line had answered louder than any rejection. "I should have picked up," Ken whispered now, as though the years had been leading him to this confession. "I should have opened that door when you needed me." Not answering, it wasn't strength. It was cowardice. "I thought silence would protect me from losing you. I didn't see it was the very thing that pushed you away." Demet's knees weakened. The memory of that unanswered call still haunted her like a ghost. Her voice cracking, her tears falling as she waited for him to save something that was already slipping through their fingers. Now, hearing him confess regret, it was like ripping open a wound she had barely managed to stitch closed. Her whisper escaped before she could stop it. "I waited, Ken." The words were so faint she wasn't sure if they left her lips or just echoed in her head. But something shifted inside the apartment. A sharp inhale. His footsteps moved closer, heavier, surer, until the wood vibrated with his presence. And then, her name. Not loud. Not questioning. Just a breath, broken and sacred. Demet. The sound of it unraveled her completely. Her name lingered in the air like a secret too fragile to touch. Demet froze, her hand still pressed flat against the door, her tears falling silently onto the cold hallway floor. She hadn't heard him say her name like that in years. Not in interviews, not in gossip headlines, not in the whirlwind of cameras that followed him everywhere. This wasn't the polished star the world adored. This was the man who once whispered her name against her skin as if it was the only prayer he knew. Inside, Ken stood so close she could hear the weight of his breathing. She could picture him leaning against the other side of the wood, his head lowered, his hand mirroring hers. The thin barrier between them felt both unbreakable and unbearably fragile. "I hear you everywhere," he whispered, voice trembling. "In the elevator when it hesitates at my floor. In the sound of the mailbox when I open it, hoping for something impossible. In the mornings before the world remembers I'm supposed to be strong." He exhaled, a jagged sigh that carried years of regret. "You never left, Demet." "Not really." Her chest ached as if every syllable pressed against her ribs. She wanted to speak, to answer, but the fear of shattering the moment kept her pinned in silence. How many nights had she prayed for these words? And yet, standing here, with them finally spilling into the air, she wasn't sure her heart could survive the truth. Then Ken's tone shifted, softening in a way that made her knees weaken. "I wanted to say I was better now," he confessed. "That I learned how to keep a promise in daylight, not just at midnight. But I'm still learning, and I don't know if learning is enough." Demet's breath caught in her throat. She remembered the boyish grin he used to hide behind after their fights, the way he tried to fix everything with humor and heat, never realizing that sometimes all she wanted was his honesty. And now, here he was, stripping himself bare with words she thought she would never hear. Her fingers curled against the door, aching to turn the knob. But fear pinned her in place. What if he wasn't ready? What if this was just another confession whispered into empty rooms, meant to soothe his guilt and not rebuild what they had lost? And yet, the pull was undeniable. She lowered her forehead to the door again, whispering so softly she barely heard herself. "Then show me, Ken." Inside, silence. Heavy, aching silence. She almost believed he hadn't heard her at all. But then the floor creaked, and she knew he was closer now. So close she imagined the brush of his shadow against hers. "If you open this door," he said, voice low, deliberate, "I can't promise perfection. I can't promise forever. But I can promise this, I won't disappear when it's hard. I won't leave your calls unanswered. I won't ask you to carry the silence anymore." Demet's entire body trembled. The words she'd begged for that night, the night she cried into the ringing line, were here now, waiting just beyond the wood. Her hand slipped down to the doorknob. She held it, frozen, torn between the fear of repeating history and the hope of rewriting it. The metal was cool against her palm. One turn. One choice. One heartbeat that could change everything. The silence stretched like a thread pulled too tight, threatening to snap. Demet's hand lingered on the doorknob, every muscle tense, her mind a storm of memories and questions. On the other side, Ken stayed still, but his presence was so heavy it was as if the door itself was breathing with him. She thought of all the times they had come close to this, moments when love hovered on their lips but pride or fear forced them apart. She thought of the letters she had written but never sent, the half-dialed numbers she deleted before pressing call, the nights she lay awake whispering his name into the dark like a secret. And here she was, once again at his door, caught between holding on and letting go. "Demet," he said again, her name wrapped in hesitation and hope. "If you're not ready, I'll wait." His voice cracked, the vulnerability raw. "I'll wait as long as it takes." Her tears fell faster. Waiting was the one thing they had done too much of. Waiting for the right time, waiting for wounds to heal, waiting for pride to fade. But maybe, just maybe, this was the moment where waiting ended. Her grip tightened on the knob. Slowly, she twisted. The click was small, barely audible, but it felt like thunder inside her chest. She pushed gently, and a thin line of light spilled into the hallway. There he was. Ken stood only a breath away, his tall frame leaning against the door as if he had been holding it up. His eyes found hers immediately, and everything else dissolved, the years apart, the silence, the pride. His gaze carried all the words he had never said, all the apologies, all the confessions. For a long moment, they simply stared. The world outside disappeared. It was just them, caught between what they were and what they still could be. Finally, Ken reached out, hesitant but steady, his hand brushing hers on the knob. His touch was warm, grounding, and devastatingly familiar. Behind her tears, Demet managed to whisper, "Behind this door. I heard your voice, and my heart shattered." His expression broke, pain, regret, love, all colliding at once. "Then let me help you pick up the pieces," he murmured. The hallway no longer felt like a prison of memories. It felt like the threshold of something new, something fragile, yes, but alive. Demet stepped across the line, into the faint glow of his apartment, into the air that smelled like tea and regret. Ken didn't move away. He simply opened his arms the way he should have years ago. She fell into him, not gracefully, but desperately. His arms wrapped around her, firm and trembling at the same time, as if he feared she might vanish. And for the first time in years, Demet allowed herself to breathe against his chest, where the world was quieter and her heart remembered its rhythm. "I thought I lost you forever," she confessed into the fabric of his shirt. "You didn't," Ken replied quickly, his lips brushing her hair. "I lost myself. But if you'll let me, I'll find us again." They pulled back just enough to see each other's faces. Her tears glistened, his eyes burned, but neither looked away. It wasn't a perfect reunion. It wasn't cinematic or clean. It was raw, messy, and real, two people carrying scars, daring to believe those scars could make a stronger bond. Demet raised a hand to his cheek, tracing the familiar line of his jaw. "Don't disappear this time," she whispered. "I won't," he vowed, voice steady, certain. "When the phone rings, I'll answer. When you knock, I'll open. No more silence." Their lips met softly, hesitantly at first, then with a force that came from years of longing pressed into a single heartbeat. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a promise, fragile but fierce. The door stood open behind them, no longer a barrier, but a witness to their choice. For once, they weren't waiting. They weren't breaking. They were beginning. And somewhere, deep inside her, Demet felt the shattered pieces of her heart slowly fit back together, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to believe. Enough to try. Enough to stay.